We're not interested in focusing on what can't be done. Young people today don't have an experience of can't. They have experience of can. Now, sometimes that can is naive and ill-informed, but the predisposition to feel that you can do something is a reality for many people in this generation, particularly those who have been fortunate enough to achieve some level of education, higher education, some level of mobility. The reality is they can. We can do some things that we could not do before. It's possible and it's being done. And in the world, in the realm of social justice, there still exists a mindset of can't that is sometimes ill-conceived in itself, ill-informed, which is to say, the blanket notion that there's some invisible force or there's some visible force in terms of the white man that would keep us from doing certain things is just not true anymore, or not across the board, or even to the level that we may have reasonably considered some 60, 50 years ago. And so we seek to rationally understand what has changed so that we can adjust our programs accordingly. We can adjust our mindset and our expectations accordingly, because we don't want to miss out on any opportunities because we're assuming that something is not possible. So, again, we're interested in working within the Unitarian Universalist context because within this faith denomination there's essentially no restrictions on developing your own theological framework. There's no dogma, there's no doctrine required to be a part of a nurturing, supportive denominational framework. Within that Unitarian Universalist tradition, our evolved faith draws on many religious sources and welcomes people of all ethnicities and of different beliefs. We must have that position if we're going to work within a Unitarian Universalist context, and we're interested in that position. Because also one of the things that we realized in 2011 in an interdependent global society, that even though we still have our local realities that are certainly present first and foremost, the reality is that many of the macro issues that we must engage in the liberation struggle require cooperation, partnership, and certainly at least understanding of other people, of other ethnic groups. And so while we are still focused on doing for self and building self, we also realize that there are times in which we are going to have to interface and interweave with other communities, other groups. And so we're excited about that because we know that those opportunities are going to make the difference sometimes in something being done within a 10 or 20 year span versus a year or two span if we were able to learn from other people's mistakes and certainly get help. So again, we are interested in drawing on many faiths and religious sources as we enter into the house of Amen. We are no longer necessarily, even though we're tied to the Black Christian nationalist heritage, we are not necessarily bound by the Christian church in this movement. And I know that's something that might seem contradictory, but you must understand that even when Black Christian nationalism, there is an assumption that we choose the church from which to pursue liberation for African Americans as a strategic choice. It's not an inherently necessary choice for Black Christian nationalism. The master teacher, Jeramogi, he basically says that we could pick any religion within the world because they all are sourced in Africa. They're all black religions. Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, they all, as faith systems or ways of life, are rooted in Africa, as all humankind and civilization is rooted in Africa. We choose the black church in the African American context because it's the one institution that has made the difference in our lives. But it's not a necessary requirement. So with the House of Amen, we are opening up the box and saying all these traditions that are part of the African American experience. From day one, Islam was part of the African American experience. Certainly from day one, Judaism as the precursor to Christianity was part of the African American experience. And now in contemporary times, for those who are pursuing cultural nationalism and a re-identification with Africa, that other faith systems, traditional African faith systems like Akan, Yoruba, or belief systems of the ancient Nile Valley Kemetic civilization are present and relevant for young people who are very serious about those traditions. So there's no reason at this point in our history to restrict ourselves just to the Christian church. As a matter of fact, that may actually be holding us back from the full expression of the ideas that Jaramogi Bebe was bringing to fore. So, in the House of Amen, we are united by shared values, not by creed or dogma. We are united by shared values, not by creed or dogma. And those values, while it may be expressed in many ways, they are founded upon the basic premise of Black Christian nationalism, which is there's nothing more sacred than the liberation of Black people. That there's nothing more sacred than the liberation of Black people. What does that mean? That means that in the reality in which we are still oppressed, that we still have some ways to go to be free, that before anything else that we may consider of value and importance for our people, we must be liberated. We must liberate ourselves. And in that space, we begin to develop an independent and holistic system of sacredness that's based upon our full humanity. But until we are free, we are not able to be in touch with that humanity that Minister Malcolm taught us is necessary for a precursor to be an empowered human being on the world. So our lay groups are places, our small groups are places where we gather to nurture our spirits and put our faith into action through social justice work. We are a social justice ministry. We intend to transform ourselves and the world around us. We are the ones that we've been waiting for, as the saying goes. We are intent on being different inside and therefore then being different externally and changing that environment in which we live. Membership in the House of Amen is voluntary and does not require renouncing other religious affiliations. As I mentioned, I still consider myself associated with the Shrines of the Black Madonna, as well as the Unitarian Universalist faith. But any participation in House of Men does not require anyone to leave anything behind that they're doing. This is a free association. This is a space of inclusiveness. We are charting new directions for the African American worship tradition. We are charting new directions, just as Jaramogi Bebe, Reverend Clay, wrote a book where he charted new directions for the Black church. We are charting new directions for the general African American worship tradition, whether it be Islam, Judaism, Hebrew, or Nubian, or whatever. We are taking the fundamental premise that Black people are people of faith, that we are rooted in spiritual technology, and we are taking that, and then we are also charting new directions for the liberal religion ministry model of the Unitarian Universalist Church, which, I'll be frank with you, is largely a white denomination. So itself needs transformation. It needs expansion to be more inclusive of the entire American family. And so we're doing two things at once with the House of Amen. We are challenging both of these foundational, progressive, and amazingly innovative original American experiments to go further. And we say we are doing that by any means necessary. Now, that brings us closer to one of the central tenets of what we're going to be dealing with the House of Amen.